Before we go into the main subject, let's talk about the objects and locations which are currently in the game. First of all is the noticeable nuke, in the very end of the map, and by the police department. As you can see, the nuke remains unexploded somehow even after the impact to the ground. And you can probably tell that the neighborhood in the game is located in the US or British. But in this theory we're going to assume that it is in the United States. And since it's in the US, there is a high chance of this nuke was launched from Russia in order to start a nuclear warfare between them and the US. But why would the Russians wanted to start a nuclear warfare at the beginning? Or maybe the Russians themselves wasn't the one who launched that nuke. There must have been spies that secretly implanted into the government by either a cult or some anonymous corporations, or even by the other corrupted governments. Now to the locations. There are at least 5 locations in the game, and that is the subway, police department, the neighborhood, spawn, the sewer, and finally the bunker. But let's just talk about the bunker and the sewer. You might be wondering, why would there be a secret bunker in the neighborhood? And why was there a sewer system that were connected to some locations? Well, first of all is the bunker. As you can probably tell that this bunker was used by the agencies, either from the government or foreigner spies. There is lots of room in the bunker, but the most specialized room for me is the execution room, where in the older version is the place that contains some unreleased weapons, and until this update, then it is a place that contained a strange egg. And now moving to the sewer. As you can see, this sewer is connected to multiple locations like the road, the Middle Yellow's house, and the police department. Now moving on to the mystery of its existence. In older version of the game, the sewer was only connected to the main road, and no other locations than that. But in the latest update we can see that its connection has been expanded, either by the homeless people, the agency, or the cultist. And now let's talk about the sound effect every time you fell into a pit. If you fell at least once into one of these dark black pits, then you might have heard a scream of some anonymous creature. In the older version of the game, these pits can't emit sound effects after you fell into one, but in the latest version it can. Now let's move on to the theory. Theory number 1. The cult's invasion. And as for the nuke, these cultists must have also secretly activated it while manipulating the government of Russia. They secretly wanted to start a nuclear warfare between the US and Russia so they can weaken both Russia and the US before their final invasion, but unfortunately the nuke didn't explode. In fact, it remains still next to the police department. But around these times the cultists were also in the bunker, and when they heard the news that the nuke didn't explode, they must have came to another plan, which is manipulate the entire neighborhood to fight against each other in order to find the spies who launched the nuke. And so on the war begins. Theory number 2. The nuclear warfare. In this theory, the Russia forces has launched a nuke to the US in order to start a nuclear warfare, but it seems like the nuke they launched has met some issues while impacting to the ground. So no nuclear warfare has been started. But around the time the nuke impacted to the ground, people in the neighborhood started to panic, even though they tries to calm themselves down. But again, the Russians sent another missile in order to activate the nuke, but unfortunately again the missile missed somehow and hit the middle of the neighborhood. And so people starts making a bridge over the pit. Everything would have stopped there if the suspicion of someone in the neighborhood is a Russian spy did pop up. And the bunker, of course, either the government or the Russians built it to observe the unexploded nuke. If the one who built it was the Russians, then they could have been supplying the people in the neighborhood weapons and rations in order to make them killing each others and lower the population by a bit, but after that they would spread the news through the media and cause more chaos in the US. Theory number 3. The testing zone. As you can see when you go to the very end of the map, you can see some iron gates, which added up to my theory about the fact that everything that happened in the game is just a test. So basically you are in a weapon testing zone. Either that or it is a human strength test so they can observe the test subject's action in a destroyed or abandoned neighborhood, about what these test subjects would do when they are given weapons. Theory number 4. You are an infected. The iron gates that I mentioned earlier can be the gate that isolate you from the outside world because the nuke might have exploded. But instead of killing everyone, it leaves behind some living abominations that is human-like. So the bunker could have been the place where they observe these creatures' action and find either a cure or use them as a bioweapon. Theory number 5. The alien invasion. So the person who launched the nuke could have been the aliens who was secretly implanted into the government. In order to get rid of the intelligent living creatures on the planet, they have to start a nuclear warfare to wipe out humanity, but unfortunately the nuke didn't explode. Soon after that, the government has noticed some strange objects and creatures around the nuke area. They started to observe the area around the nuke, but unfortunately they were killed off by these creatures, But before that, they have supplied the neighborhood with weapons because they know for sure that some of the people living in that neighborhood is an imposter. Oh, and the sewer also connected to the graveyard. And since this my first video game analysis video, please feel free to leave a comment if you spot any mistakes in the video or in my theories.